Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Jackson. This is Chapter 4, Section 1, Part 5. In this last video of this section, we are going to look at how to subtract rational expressions. We find the difference of rational expressions the same way we find the difference of fractions. And notice I had copied the previous section notes too quickly. This should not say sum. This should say the difference. Determine the lowest common denominator and rewrite equivalent fractions using that common denominator. Find the difference of the numerators and keep the denominator. So it's really like finding the sum, only this time we're going to take the difference. All right, let's take a look at an easy example here with rational numbers. I've got 2/5 minus 3/10. I'm going to rewrite 2/5 using a equivalent fraction. I want to rewrite this in tenths, so that means I'm basically going to write or multiply 2/5 times 2/2 so that I get tenths. And I've got my 3/10 already ready to go. And so on the left I have 4/10 minus 3/10. That's 4 minus 3/10. And that is equivalent to 1/10. And likewise, let's take a look at example where the denominators are slightly larger. In the previous video, we found that 45 can be broken down into 3 times 3 times 5. And the 60 could be broken down as 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. And so our common, we need the parts of both numbers. So I have the 2 2s and 2 3s and a 5. And as we found, that product of those numbers is 180. We found that in the previous video. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite 2 45ths in 180ths. So the pieces that I'm missing in 45 would be these 2 2s here. And so I'm going to multiply this by 4/4. And to rewrite 7/60ths in 180ths, I'm going to multiply that by the 3/3. That's the piece I'm missing. And so on the left I have 8/180 minus 21/180. That's 8 minus 21/180, or negative 13/180ths. Now let's take a look at one example of finding the difference of rational expressions. So I have a couple of rational expressions here. The first one on the left, the numerator cannot be simplified, but the denominator is a difference of squares. So I'm going to rewrite that as x plus 5 times x minus 5. And the one on the right cannot be simplified. So if I take a look at these two denominators, I have x plus 5 times x minus 5. Over here on the right I have x plus 5. So the common denominator is going to be this because it contains this piece. And so I do not need to rewrite my left expression at all. But on this expression here, to the right, if I'm going to rewrite that as an equivalent expression, I'm going to need that x minus 5 piece. And so I'm going to multiply this times x minus 5 over x minus 5. And on the left, I'll just keep it as is. And on the right, I have 2x minus 5 times x minus 5 over x plus 5 times x minus 5. One thing to note here I've seen before we progress in this problem is I've seen students start to want to cancel this when they see this. We're not ready to do that. In fact, you're undoing your work when you do that, but I see that all the time. So be aware of that. So I have 3x minus 5. Now over here, I have a negative here, negative 2 being distributed. So be careful with your signs. We've got negative 2x. Negative 2 times a negative 5 is a positive 10. And so now we're just going to combine like terms. We've got 3x minus 2x. That reduces to 1x. Negative 5 plus 10 is a positive 5. And we have x plus 5. Whoops. I have x plus 5 times x minus 5. And I think you could see what's coming now. In this case, we're now ready to simplify. And I have 1x plus 5 on the numerator and the same factor, common factor in the denominator. So they're going to cancel. And so all of this simplifies to 1 over x minus 5. And for our restricted domain, we can see that x cannot equal either positive or negative 5, as both would cause a 0 in the denominator. Okay, in this video, we use the same skills that we did in the previous video, finding a common denominator with rational expressions and taking the difference between those expressions. Hope this video helps. Please subscribe.